Greetings, and thank you for visiting my channel. The following are the most sophisticated tales of revenge and deception. Post-coital slumber is a state of joy. Because of this, I could bind my wife to our custom-made ash wood headboard. She gradually regained consciousness. She gradually opened her eyes and wept. Bob Simmons, her partner, awoke to discover that his wrist was bound in response to her cry. Bob's shriek was more masculine as he fell from the bed, twisting his arm and slitting his wrist. He was unable to speak as he struggled to regain his position on the bed. Your mistress's spouse, who is likely to be standing at the foot of the bed with a large caliber handgun, will likely execute the plan upon your awakening. How was your night's sleep? I submitted a request. Jerry, my wife wept. It is not as it appears. I suggested, let's observe its appearance. What is the situation with you and the stranger who is attempting to persuade me that you are a decent wife while you are lying in our bed? Bob wheezed. Don't be silly, you are not incarcerated as a result of your wife's infidelity. His attention was fixed on the .35 Magnum that I was holding. That was logical, as I was trembling with rage and sorrow. The man you abandoned me for is approaching. I would be obligated to safeguard your honor if you were my wife, however. I am disinclined to do so, as it appears to be of little consequence in the near future. I found it intriguing that he continues to hold you in high regard. Our comments were disregarded by Barb. Jerry, please place the revolver aside and engage in a conversation regarding this matter. She pleaded with the authorities not to imprison the individual in question. In our relationship, the rose has blossomed, correct? He is insulted by both of you. I anticipated that you would demonstrate regard for him. He is the reason you divided us. I responded with regret. Jerry, we will remain united. I made a significant error, however. We can recover. She wept. I will fix it. What method will you employ to accomplish this? Will you abstain from engaging in sexual activity with him in the past? Because that is the sole future connection I have to you. I was deeply fond of you. My existence would be miserable if it were to transpire. I have no desire to return, however. What if I am compelled to cohabitate with an unfaithful woman? I submitted a request. I maintained the revolver at my temple. Pulling the detonator in this manner may be the most straightforward approach. I would alleviate your distress and liberate you. She screamed. No, Jerry, he exclaimed. Come on, execute it. I meticulously lowered the revolver. I entertained a notion. When the revolver drum was opened and the piston was actuated, 6 bullets were discharged. Their body collided with the ground. I reached down and retrieved one. The headboard it was affixed to was not shattered, and the asshole grunted in frustration. Unhappy failure. Upon my removal of the final cartridge, he became at ease. Barb appeared frightened. A .35 Magnum round weighing 125 grams. The projectile fired from this pistol travels at a velocity of 1,500 feet per second. When it strikes with force, its damage area is nearly tripled and flattened. The trauma will result in your death, regardless of whether you survive the impact. I commented, ensuring that their attention was captured. The drum received the cartridge. Barb, you are aware that I had a penchant for wagering prior to our meeting. It nearly shattered us during our initial years of partnership. I halted for you. I did derive advantages from ceasing. Regrettably, I stated that I was only able to quit because of my affection for you. I spun the drum by tilting the revolver back. I rotated my wrist and reinserted the cylinder into the revolver as it was in motion. I will allow fate to determine the outcome, as I am uncertain about my options. I referred to it as fate's finger. I gradually directed the firearm toward her partner. I will commence with Bob, who is the guest of honor. Bob, would you like me to record for your wife or daughters? I submitted a request. Bob, if you consume that projectile, the residents at 726 Maple Lane will be desolate. Allison, your wife, and your twin daughters, Zoe and Chloe, will react with distress upon receiving the delivery from my investigator. I contemplated sending fewer explicit images, however. Your daughters are entitled to be informed of your late-night office activities. In order to complete the image, I have included photographs of your other 2 whores. I was unaware that it was feasible for him to become more pale when I pointed the revolver at him. I withdrew the mallet. He closed his eyes, triggering the weapon. Click. The empty cartridge container was struck by a hammer. I was concerned that he would experience a loss of consciousness. He regained his senses. The sheet that encircled him turned yellow as a result of his wetting himself. You prevailed in this round. It is possible that you will encounter your beautiful ladies once more. Calmly, I responded. I directed the firearm at my wife. Barb, what about you? Have you made arrangements for your own mortality? Last Sunday I attended worship. I assume that you have admitted your guilt. In the event that you pass away today without confessing, will you be consigned to either paradise or hell? Unless there is a transformation. Is adultery still considered immoral in your religion? Inquired of her. Indeed, she murmured with her eyes closed. I apologize, what did you say? Inquired of her. Indeed, Jerry, adultery is a transgression. It is an offense against both God and your matrimony. I have never acknowledged my actions. She stated that the sound of a gunfire would render me irredeemable. I squeezed the trigger and said, let us determine whether your God desires your life. The trigger was activated by squeezing it. The empty cartridge container was struck by a hammer. She wept as I once more directed the firearm toward my temple. Barb was informed. Before you entered my existence, I was so despondent. I experienced a sense of well-being solely during that winning sequence. The thrill was consistently prioritized over the financial gain. I recall the compassion and gentleness with which you treated my hands in the emergency department that evening. Gino's goons had an impact on me. I vowed to refrain from participating in the game if I were to have a wife as compassionate as you. Did I ever inform you that your hands were securing my consciousness, preventing me from moving? After paying Gino that evening, I have refrained from engaging in any form of gambling. I am aware that existence is unbearable without you. You are the foundation of my life. If that projectile strikes me, my suffering will conclude. You are incapable of inflicting any further harm upon me. I murmured. I almost want that she wept as I once more discharged the handgun. Click. The empty cartridge container was struck by a hammer. My spouse shouted. I am beyond outraged. Bob profaned himself. I directed the revolver at my beloved. Bob, in light of the possibility that this may be your final moment on Earth, could you provide an explanation for your interest in married women? I failed to comprehend it. Your daughters are adorable, and your wife is delightful. For what reason? I submitted a request. Dear son, I implore you to refrain from committing my murder. I thumb-pulled the trigger, shrugging. He experienced a sudden burst of weeping. Locating their triggers and counteracting them is crucial. Your spouse was dissatisfied. Disagreements and imperfections are inherent in every marriage, regardless of its quality. She lusted after me, and I simply had to emphasize her sexiness and assistive nature. This would serve as the final installment, he exclaimed. I win when I fuck another man's wife in her husband's bed. This individual appeared to be in serious difficulty. He appeared forlorn as he lay on the soiled bedding. I should have taken a photograph. But I refrained from doing so in order to prevent the collection of incriminating evidence. He groused as he attempted to crush the headboard of the bed once more. I fixed my attention on his eyes. The trigger was activated. The empty cartridge container was struck by a hammer. Asshole experienced a loss of consciousness. I directed the firearm at my wife. Either you or I. I am disheartened by the fact that my partner has fled. Barb, you are treasured by me. I almost hoped that it was not you. Things would be cleaned up if I returned home and found you two in bed, and then murdered myself. You would survive. I would not be concerned with murder. I informed her with regret that all of that anguish would be gone, and you would be free to molest anyone. She endeavored to unwind. We were all clinging to a single thread. Jerry, please cease and desist. Your argument has been effectively articulated. Bob collapsed from fear while sitting in his urination. You emerged victorious. We can convince Bob to refrain from charging by placing the rifle down. Nothing that you did was irreversible. I am interested in residing with you. If you relinquish the pistol, I will execute any divorce decree you submit. I will confess my sins on a daily basis if I can convince you to depart. She implored Jer to cease. Barb, it is possible that I am no longer Jerry. When I discovered your actions, I was angry. I found out that you did it in my bed. I experienced the death of an internal component. It appears that I am the finger of destiny. Would you like us to verify your time? The hammer was retracted by my forefinger. The trigger was activated. The empty cartridge container was struck by a hammer. When I pointed the revolver at my head, Barb roared. It appears that fate has made a decision. Barb, you are treasured by me. I apologize for the occurrence. I extend my best wishes for your prosperity. Declaring, I gradually discharged the weapon. She cried, Jerry, please do not damage the headboard. I will either depart or remain, and you are free to humiliate me. Do not engage in this activity. She cried out, God, I need your help, Barb. This is preferable. I expressed my affection for you. I bemoaned. I closed my eyes, triggering the weapon. Click. The empty cartridge container was struck by a hammer. It would be prudent to provide a clarification. As a participant, it is feasible to observe this. I possess exceptional digit dexterity. My left hand was injured by Gino, while my right hand was unharmed. Dexterity is enhanced through the use of card tricks, chip, shuffling, and coin tosses. Therefore, it is effortless to extract a cartridge from a revolver's drum, while the audience is observing the muzzle. I was able to extricate the cartridge and place it in my palm by tilting the revolver backwards to turn the cylinder, which provided me with sufficient cover. After that, everything was fair game. For what reason? I desired for these individuals to experience a sense of apprehension and anguish, however, I was not adequately prepared for their ordeal. Resuming our narrative, my wife's expression caused me to guffaw uncontrollably. Who is this individual? Did you believe that you two would be able to lock me up? I was unable to recover my breath and choked. I chuckled as I bent down and retrieved all 6 cartridges of ammo from the floor. I ensured that the pistol was loaded correctly this time. It was futile to take any risks. The key to the handcuffs was transferred to my wife. She was weeping and breathless. Jerk. Bob was regaining consciousness. Barb continued to weep and refrained from retrieving the key. Bob was gazing at me while examining the key, attempting to determine his next course of action. I directed him to retrieve the key. Scumbag, retrieve your clothing, and depart. Bob, please regard that as an instruction. I will execute you and your family in the most agonizing manner if I receive a call from the authorities, but you are permitted to live today. Remain silent in order to protect yourself, your spouse, and your children.